Housing affordability is a persistent issue in the minds of many Americans. 75% of Americans indicate that a lack of affordable homes is a significant issue, and this crosses party lines. In addition, more than 50% of Americans believe that the affordability crisis in the housing market will only get worse. Are you one of the Americans that feel this way? And if so, what can we do to address the issue? The United States must reform its restrictive zoning laws to allow for the building of more housing units, as these restrictive zoning laws have helped to contribute to higher prices, socioeconomic inequality, and have hindered economic growth. My name is Christopher, and I used to sell real estate in Texas. During this time, I witnessed firsthand how families, large and small, and single people alike, struggled to afford homes. Of course, this problem has only gotten worse since the pandemic. Today, we will discuss how the affordability crisis has been exacerbated by a supply and demand issue, how restrictive zoning laws contribute to this crisis, and finally, some issues to address the problem. First, let's discuss how the roots of the affordability crisis in the housing market are connected to a supply and demand issue. The United States for years has not built enough housing units to keep up with demand. The Center for American Progress, which is an independent, nonpartisan policy institute that works to improve Americans' lives through smart policy, conducted a report in October 2024 titled Americans Recognize Housing Affordability Crisis, Support New Policies to Fix Market and Build More Homes, indicate that researchers have found that the United States has a deficit of 4 million housing units. In addition, demand is higher than supply in every community in every region in our country. Simply put, there are more Americans than housing units, and when supply cannot keep up with demand, prices are rising. Americans are very smart and aware of what the issue is. In fact, in this same report from the Center for American Progress in October 2024, it indicates that 71% of suburban households know that restrictive zoning laws restrict the number and types of units that are built, and in addition, these laws are tying the hands of developers so they cannot build the units that the market is requesting. Next, let's talk about how these restrictive zoning laws, which exist at state, local, and federal levels, are tying developers' hands. Local governments have effectively legislated away missing middle units. A missing middle unit is a housing unit that's not a single family home and it's not a 30-story apartment building. It could be a triplex, a duplex, or an apartment complex. In fact, in Austin, Texas, there are several restrictive zoning laws that make building denser neighborhoods basically impossible. The Foundation for Economic Education, which has been around since 1946 studying issues of economic importance to Americans, found in a report from 2017 titled 9 Ways Austin Keeps Its Zoning Rules Weird, that several zoning laws have impacted the ability of developers to build multifamily communities. Some of these laws are minimum lot sizes, floor to area ratios, and compatibility restrictions. Compatibility restrictions are some of the hardest because it places an additional restriction on structures that are built next to single-family homes. Because there are so many single-family homes, this is just another layer of development killing restrictions. Lastly, let's speak about how Americans, government officials, and researchers alike are aware of these issues and are working to find solutions. NGOs, elected officials, and community leaders are working towards solutions for the affordability crisis and to implement long-term reforms. Smart Growth America, which is a nonprofit organization that helps study smart growth policies, conducted a report and found that in this report titled Zoned In, Economic Benefits and Shared Prosperity from Form-Based Codes, that these form-based codes, a different type of zoning, helps address these issues by grouping housing, jobs, and amenities together. You find that, for example, areas near transit service stations are more dense. They have more housing variability to address the market need. In cities like Charlotte, they are continuing to build more dense developments near their transit lines, which is an example of smart growth policies. This same report found that where these form-based codes are in effect, you find higher construction activity, you find a higher generation of tax revenue. Developers are experiencing more flexibility and predictability in these form codes as well, making development much easier. In conclusion, We have talked about how reforming our zoning laws is essential to addressing the housing supply crisis that we're facing and providing Americans with affordable, diverse housing options. Some of the ways we've talked about this is that we have found that, one, Americans believe that housing is too expensive, that it will continue to be too expensive, and that restrictive zoning laws are responsible for this crisis. Two, we've confirmed the feeling of these Americans. Cities like Austin do, in fact, have restrictive policies. We've pointed out a few, like compatibility restrictions that make it harder to build denser neighborhoods. And lastly, we pointed out that there are some organizations that are working towards solutions that provide more predictability and flexibility for builders, increase construction activity, address the supply issue, and increase tax revenue, which sounds like a win-win solution. If you're one of those 75% of Americans who felt that this was a significant issue, I think that we've addressed some of the ways in which we can address this affordability crisis. Working with local, state, and federal elected officials, we can do the work to address these issues. We can change the laws. We can allow for the types of developments that can address housing shortages and affordability that we are facing in this nation right now. The power is in our hands.